Oh, there we go. Cool beans. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, everyone who's joining us live. And for those who aren't joining us live, thank you so much for checking out our YouTube channel. Tonight, we have an amazing conversation that we have planned with Mr. Stephen Lancaster, as appears below. I always get it wrong when I try to point to the box. It's like mirror image.
It's like the Brady Bunch.
Exactly. Yep. We always try to coordinate it, and it just never works.
Never. That's fine.
But yeah, thank you everybody who's joining. Really quick, we always like to do quick introductions. We are Epicedium Paranormal. We are a paranormal team based out of Northern New Jersey. We are a client-based team. However, we also highly emphasize research and outreach because knowledge is power. And if you're curious, research, learn. And paranormal isn't just, in our opinion, encompassing spirits or deceased or ghosts, whatever you would like to call them. It also encompasses cryptozoology, aliens, UFOs, anything out there that you don't quite know if it's, real or not. But, there's enough evidence to think maybe.
The unknown.
We're all about the maybe. And tonight, we're super excited because we get to cover all of those topics with the expert, Stephen Lancaster.
Yes.
Yeah, you.
I love it.
So really quick, my name is Gail. I'm one of the founders of Epicedium. And, I've been interested in the paranormal pretty much my whole life after an experience as a child when moving to New Jersey. It's been great. It's been a great ride. I'll put it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Ms. Brittany.
Yes, my name's Brittany. I'm also one of the founders of the team as well. Ever since I had an experience as a child, it's forever engraved in my mind. And so therefore, that started my quest on trying to figure out what is under the umbrella of the unknown. So,
awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And last but certainly not least, our guest for this evening, Mr. Stephen Lancaster, who is known to be an author, investigator, television personality, expert in cryptozoology, feminology, and all that fun stuff. Hello, sir, and welcome to our show.
Thank you for that. I should leave now because that was good. That was the high point. I'm out.
Definitely not. We have seen you on Shadow Initiative, and we know, sir, you have a lot to talk about, and we are going to take advantage of that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So let's get started on that.
Yes, let's jump in.
So one of the things I personally think you're probably most known for is two of your books is Norman the Doll. So let's get started with that. So your two books are Norman the Doll That Needed to Be Locked Away and Norman 2, The True Story of a Possessed Doll's Revenge, which, gotta be honest, just that title alone gotta pique the paranormal interest right there.
I'm not responsible for the titles. So it's either a good or a bad thing. I don't know.
Just take credit.
It's all good.
They never go with my suggestions ever. I wanted it to be a true haunted Toy Story.
Oh,
You know?
I like that.
No, that's not scary enough. So
really? That's
Yeah.
kind of creepy. If anybody who's seen the last Toy Story movie, there's a few creepy moments. So just to give a background to everybody, you are quite the collector of just all things antiques, especially toys, dolls, that kind of thing. So you were in a store one day and you were interested in a box, correct? That was on top of a shelf. And it turns out it wasn't just a box. And you got quite the story from the woman who I believe owned the store, correct?
Right.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Actually, where's that? This is the penknife I often talk about that found Norman. But my wife and I are always, actually we were doing it today, traveling around a nice 3-4 hour circle to antique shops. Thrift stores are great for that kind of thing. Vintage stores, because I collect the old toys, allegedly haunted items and things like that. And you were right. I saw this box. It was kind of way up on it was out of the way. Like a normal person wasn't supposed to just try to get this thing down. So anyways, long story short, I got it down, and you want to see what's in the box. It's like what Brad Pitt in Seven, what's in the box? You got to know what's in the box. So we pried it open, and there was a 1960s Maddie Mattel doll. And of course, to us, it's just like, okay, cool. There's another vintage toy, that can go with everything else in this room. And long story short, there were two women at the counter, and at first they were very reserved. They had reservations about talking. They just kind of dismissive until the word paranormal came out. And then they just opened it all up, and kind of gave the backstory on the doll. And it's one of those things, I've heard tens of thousands of ghost stories, so you take it with a grain of salt until you experience it yourself. Mm-hmm. So long story short, I'm like, how about $5? She said, yeah, that's fine. And we took it. Didn't even get the box that I was initially setting out to get. We were just so excited to get this old doll and get home. And it didn't happen overnight. This happened over months, years. It started off subtle, and then it just built and built and built to an apex, and then to the point where you finally knew there was no denying the fact it was this doll causing the activity in our house. We had multiple witnesses. I had put surveillance throughout the entire house. Because, at first, when you're active paranormal investigators, I've always subscribed to the idea of spiritual magnetism, kind of like the dog that follows you home. How many of us out there that are really involved in the field have come home from an investigation and start experiencing the same activity in your house that you were just experiencing at said location.
Right.
So you had to think about that. And then I had to think about all these other items I had in the house. Was that the cause of what was happening? Until finally it just got to the point there was no denying it was this doll. And again, it's called Maddie Mattel. I named it Norman just because he didn't look normal. Just Norman was the first thing that came out. And the interesting thing about how Norman became a household name is I had no intention of making my research with him public. None at all. I had a 3-book deal with Llewellyn Worldwide. I had done the first book, The True Case Files of a Paranormal Investigator, the second book, Dark Spirits. And my style was these books chronicled my investigations. So each chapter was its own story, its own investigation. When you ended that chapter, that was the end of the investigation. Now you're reading about another one. So the third book was supposed to follow suit to that and be another anthology, so to speak. And I just happened to be talking to my acquisitions editor about Norman. I was just mentioning what was going on because she's always so curious as to what I do. And I tell her, and I send her some of the video footage from the surveillance, and she's like, oh my God, could you do a whole book on him? And at the time, my deadline for my third book was only a few months away. And I said, there's no way. So first off, I don't have enough material to fill an entire book. You'd be stretching it out. I said, you're just going to have to give me more time. So long story short, that contract moved to 2 years ahead. And I researched him for years to finally write that first book. And of course, with that, immediately they wanted a second one. And again, I said, look, this stuff isn't on call. I have to see what continues to happen. I will continue to log it in my case files. And if I can complete a follow-up, to bring people up to speed to what he's doing, I'm more than happy to. And luckily that worked out. Now, the downside of it is Norman became a household name mostly because of the Travel Channel. And I love the Travel Channel. I love the New Dominion Pictures, the film company I worked with, because they know me. I won't do something for television unless I'm in control of it. Right. They're not going to twist my words. They're not going to fake anything. They're not going to, it's not going to be manipulated. But when they did the show on Norman, they only, in 43 minutes, you can only cover so much. When it breaks down to the commercials and everything, you've got 43 minutes. And it only covered about 25% of that first book. So to the millions of people who saw that episode, that's all they know of Norman. So all the comments I get online, whether it be Facebook or YouTube videos of Norman, they're basing everything on what they saw on a television show that only covered one aspect of his haunting. And I tried to tell them, look, this is 4 or 5 years now into this. There are 2 books chronicling all of this. If you read this, you will see that they only covered this much of it. Because you just couldn't cover it all.
Right.
But it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because it was awesome to get that part of the story out, but at the same time, because it was like a retelling, it didn't really give the audience the knowledge of this was an everyday thing, everyday research, hours and hundreds of hours of video. They think it makes it out like this just happened over a span of a couple of days and it was done, like most of the TV shows do.
Right. Yeah, which is true. A lot of people are now under the impression these investigations happen in 2 days. They solve the problem. Bing, bang, boom. You can review evidence in a matter of minutes, apparently, which is not the case.
I will be, and it's not, and I will be the first to tell you, I have been behind the scenes on these shows. I refuse to do investigative shows. I refuse to do it unless I'm the one doing it. But all of these shows, I've been behind the scenes of them, and this is how it works. Episode 1, let's just say, the production company will schedule 3 days. The first day is to interview the clients. And the second day is for their camera guys to go out and film all of what they call as B-roll. Get shot of the house, shot of the room, just spooky stuff. The third day is when the actual investigators are there. And they're lucky to actually be there maybe 5 hours. I had talked to a guy a couple months ago who had, I'm not going to point him out, but he had one of the TV shows investigate his house. And he said the actual time that they investigated after setting up their cameras and deciding where they're going to walk and, pretty much scripting everything, he said they were only there 2 hours. And that's what it gives the wrong impression to people. You can't be the client in 2 hours. You can't figure it all out in 2 hours. No. These people have experienced this stuff for years.
Right. Yeah. And as you noted with Norman, I mean, it's the same thing. Investigations, just like you did with Norman. I mean, they don't last just like a single night. They last months, if not years. And even then you don't have all the answers, but the best you can get out of it is helping the client in terms of like, okay, here are some measures you can take to help to alleviate the problem. There's no magical answer, unfortunately, as you learned with Norman, and that's kind of also another thing, a misconception of investigating is sometimes when you do these cases, things can potentially follow you home, right? So here you are, you actually welcomed it into your home in a way. You were like, come on in, let's see what happens. When you did that, did you take any type of precautions? Did you think like, maybe I should, do something to this room so that it stays localized? Because you're living with your family, right? And the stall was in your house.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing, and I've stopped calling it defending myself because I've had so many people say, "Oh, how could you do that? Yeah. How could you have that thing in your house? How could you risk your family?" Well, my wife and I are paranormal researchers first and foremost. Why not? Isn't that the whole point? Why would we do something to get rid of it? Doesn't that completely negate the whole point of paranormal research?
Right.
Is to observe and report. You can't learn otherwise. So like, why would I do that? And as far as the protection and that kind of stuff that I hear, we don't know if any of that stuff actually works. We're dealing with the science we have yet to even really write. So how do we know? Now my wife, she subscribes to that stuff. She's into it. I let her do it. That's her thing. I respect her for it. And I think that's what makes me and my group, when we all work together, so effective, is because I am straight and narrow, right to the point about everything. Christina, my wife, covers the more spiritual side of it. I've got my religious guy, the military guy, the electrician, the carpenter, everything that you need to know, when you're conducting research.
Yeah.
So I just tell people why. For us, it was the home field advantage. It's like, okay, this is happening in our house. We're in control of it to a degree.
Right.
We can run surveillance, monitor it 24/7. We're not at the will of a restaurant that has to open for business, or a hotel that has to have guests, or, somebody, just a regular old Joe that, well, they can't let us live in their house for a month,
Yeah.
So we had to take the opportunity and run with it. And it exposed something to me. In 20 some years of doing this, I can count on one hand the things that have really just blown me away. And Norman's one of them. And it's because of that decision that we made to do it.
Freeman. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the important part of it, is you guys are experts. This is not something that you just decided one day to go on eBay and buy like a doll that you thought could possibly be possessed. Like you knew what you were kind of walking into a little bit, especially being an avid collector of antiques and potentially affected objects. You kind of knew, I'm going to bring this thing home. Let's see what happens. Right. So, So in that regard, you have collected a lot of things over the years. Have there ever been any other objects you've kind of brought into your home that have made you go, oh boy, what's going on?
Well, that's the thing. It's like I tell people, when you're on an investigation and you think you're communicating, let's say, with a 7-year-old little girl. Are you?
Right.
If it's something sinister, it could just be pretending to be. I mean, you don't really know. And when it comes to the stuff in here, once Norman kicked things off, it was hard to say, well, he could have been the one that did it. So, there was a time where, this thing right here, this was thrown at me. This thing weighs about 1 pound. It came from Korea. It was a gift to my wife. And believe it or not, the symbols are supposed to represent spiritual protection. But this was thrown across the entire room, caught on surveillance at the back of my head. Didn't quite hit me. It kind of fell down. And there's video surveillance of that. Now, is this a haunted tiki or totem, whatever you want to call it? Or was that Norman doing it?
Right.
So there's activity here, and Norman's the cause of 99% of it. But when it comes to these other things, a lot of these things were given to me, like this Dybbuk box here, and I'm told the stories and all that kind of stuff. But unless it's blatantly obvious, like, with Norman, and you guys may or may not have seen the videos where I did tests with him, EMF test and ionic energy and temperature. And, to aim a temperature gun at him and watch your gun drop 74 to 54, 20 degrees when it hits him.
Right.
Okay, that should be impossible. To see something that isn't electrical in any way give off electromagnetic fields that rival a refrigerator when he's not electrical, that is something. When this thing can move on camera in ways that it can't even physically move if you try to do it, manually, like look down, he can't. If you try to do that with him, his whole torso bends, the whole thing goes. But in a video, his head just looks down. That's the kind of stuff that validates a haunted object. And I guess I could have just answered your question short. And it's hard to tell. Is it him or is it this other thing?
Right.
We validated him. This other stuff, not so much.
Right. And that is one thing with investigations. People and a lot of TV shows do this, they research a property to death where they come up with a story or a person, and when they go to that property or they specifically call out that person, entity, or whatever.
Mhm.
And you want to say to yourself, yeah, okay, they're communicating with you, but maybe they're pretending to be this other thing because that's who you keep talking to. It could really
Right.
be anything that's there. Just like how you're saying Norman, it could be anything, but they were acting as Norman. You just don't know.
Mhm.
And I've seen that stuff firsthand. One of the most violent cases I worked was a case that before my wife became my wife, before we were even dating, she had met me at a class I was teaching in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I used to teach Paranormal 101, and it was more or less to teach people how to use a camera. That's what it boiled down to. When to use the flash, when not to use the flash stuff. It was more equipment based than anything. Use this stuff properly. Well, she had taken a case on this old farm, and the stuff she was saying to me was just blowing my mind. And of course, I ended up there, had the whole group there, and we worked that case for about 2.5 years. And it was the most violent case I've ever been involved with. I mean, I saw investigators get thrown up against a wall, thrown down steps. I was attacked at that place. I mean, it's like I've said to people, it's the closest you ever get to hell and have a heartbeat. I mean, this place is just evil by every definition. But this place, the point I'm getting to is when my wife first started taking this case, her and her colleagues thought they were dealing with a young boy because everything that it was responding to, let's say an electronic voice phenomena, pushing a ball across the floor, it was just doing everything a kid would do. And they got the name Jimmy. And so they thought they were dealing with a young boy. Well, it turns out, no, it was just this entity luring them in to make them vulnerable to do what he ultimately did. So you've got to be careful because you think you're in a place that's been, and I'm not saying there's all these evil places like Zach Baggins does, I'm just saying you need to be careful. Because you can go in there and you think it's benign. It's just like a real live person, people can fool you.
Definitely. And you don't want to automatically jump to non-human spirit either. I mean, human spirits can certainly cause havoc if they want to, and they have fun with that. Not all of them do. And sometimes it's misconstrued. A spirit that comes across as like aggressive is really possibly just trying to get your attention because they're asking for help. So it's definitely important to keep your mind open, keep your eyes open, your ears open, and not assume anything in regards to that.
I agree. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, allow the TV shows to basically that's how they view everything. If it's done on this TV show, then that must be how it is. But to me, I've always told people that the word demon is thrown around way too much. How do you know? I mean, how do you know you're actually dealing with a demon? The way I put it to people is, look, if you were a bad person in real life, if you were a murderer, a rapist, a child molester, if you were just all around dirtbag, right? Guess what you're going to be in the afterlife? But you're probably going to be worse because you have attributes that we don't have. And it's those people, those entities that people automatically label a demon. Well, a demon is tied to religion. So then you brought in religion. And you have to think about your client. You have to think they're looking to you. So whatever you tell them, they're taking it to heart.
Right.
So if you tell them, hey, you got a demon in your house, what is that the right thing to do when you're not 100% certain?
Right.
Absolutely. And you know what? That was one of the questions we were going to talk about a little later, but we might as well tackle it now, is in terms of how the paranormal field and the country and people in general have been affected by how Hollywood, the paranormal has kind of become. They're watching these TV shows. They, and we've experienced this, clients submit an inquiry, like, I need help, and they immediately think we'll be out there that weekend to do an investigation and they'll have a solution by the next day. And we're like, well, no. Like, we actually need you to fill out about a 50-question questionnaire. We need you to have multiple conversations with us. We'll do multiple site visits. We'll, this is a deep dive situation that will take a long period of time. So how do you feel in terms of, you know, the paranormal community and other groups and just the field in general? How has that changed in the past 10, 15 years due to the introduction of Hollywood?
Is this going to bother you if I smoke in here?
No, because this might be the kind of conversation you'll need to do that for.
Let me go ahead and get a couple more then. But I think, you know, that's something that my colleagues and we have stuck to our guns on. It is keeping it professional, keeping it traditional. God, man, I'm going to roll about 20 minutes on this. The shows, at first, I thought, I won't lie, at first I thought this is going to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when Ghost Hunters originally came out, they were disproving things. They were showing, look, it's just this, it's just that, you know. And I was as naive as everybody else when that show came out. Like, okay, but then I kind of learned what was really happening. You know, it's a TV show. But I guess it's like back in the 80s, to date myself, hearing Eddie Van Halen for the first time. And I grabbed a broom and I'm tearing it up in my own mind, you know. I'm not actually playing. Right. And it's like, that's me mimicking Eddie Van Halen. And that is what has happened with these TV shows. Okay. I've seen these kids go out and I say kids, anybody younger than me is a kid. That's how I look at it. And start provoking. They literally sound like a carbon copy of Zach Baggins. Literally. You know, I've just seen them. It's a checklist. You could go right down the checklist. Oh, okay, they saw that on this show. They saw that on this show. Right. Why are you using a K2, man? Well, this guy uses it. I said, you know how easy those things are to disprove? Do you know how easy they are to trigger? Watch, I'm going to push my walkie. Look, you're lighting up there, buddy. You know, but it created a monster and not a good one. It destroyed. You know, it was already hard to be taken seriously as a paranormal research, especially in this country. Right. Whereas like the UK, they embrace it. You know, and we've had some great investigators come from over there, where the United States made it a T-shirt. That's what happened. Our commercialism and TV networks made it and marketed it and made it a T-shirt. Because when you try to compare these guys, and I know some of them personally, some of them are friends of mine, you know, and they're not bad people. No, but they're not. They shouldn't be the people that other people are modeling themselves after, because true paranormal research is boring as hell.
Yep.
I know.
It really is.
Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's a good time when you read something and you're like, whoa, that's cool.
I know, but it like kills me. I don't know about you guys, but anyone who asks me who's like not an investigator or researcher, and they're like, do your investigations happen just like they do on TV? And I'm like, no.
The reality of it hit me. I want to say it was in 2006, 2007. And I took an investigation, I want to say up near Virginia. And I get there, the team's with me, or the people I had with me at the time. We get out, the clients come out of the house, the husband and wife, and they're looking around and they're like, so what time's the camera crew get here? And I was like, the camera crew? They're like, yeah, what time's the camera crew get here? It's like, we are the camera crew. What are you talking about? You know? But that's when it really hit me, because that's how people think it is. They think it is like on TV. And it is not. You know, like you had said earlier, Gail, you're going down the line of a checklist of stuff. You know, I do a psyche eval on people. My background's in psychology. I look for drug addiction, alcohol abuse, you know, depression. What's in the refrigerator? What's in their medicine cabinet? You know, not without permission, of course. This is stuff I'm asking them, you know, because it's not always a ghost. And you have these teams that it's like they're the metal band of the paranormal. You know, I make a joke all the time. I used to have this thing I floated around Facebook that had 6 different pictures. and it said, "Can you tell which one's the metal band and which one's the Paranormal Investigators?" All standing there with their arms crossed and all black, and yeah, exactly. It's like, come on. And I'm not. You can dress however you want, whatever.
Right.
I don't care. But
Yeah.
it's the idea that that's what you put into people's heads, and
Right.
and we've done places. I've investigated places where that was the mentality the client had, but then they got to experience us. They got to experience me, and they're like, oh
Right.
wow, that makes. And they saw a whole different world.
Right.
Of what it's really like. The TV shows, they're in and out in a couple hours and they're done with you. They needed
Yeah.
you to make their money. That was it.
Yeah.
That's their only motive.
Yeah.
I hope
And
one
that's
day it changes.
Sorry, what did you say?
I hope
Britt?
that one day it changes,
Yeah. And
Better.
I feel like when Ghost Hunters started, it was with the best of intentions. They did seem to do things the right way. And I applaud them for giving the country the ability to talk about it open and honestly without feeling like it was as taboo as it was before. I think it did open up the conversation more, allow people to feel more comfortable talking about it. So in that regard, it's like this is great, On the other hand, the shows that followed tended to take that recipe, as you can say, and add different spices to it that weren't necessarily the best. And that's where I feel like a lot of people unfortunately get the misconceptions of how the paranormal works and how dark it has gotten, because it hasn't gotten dark. People think possibly it's gotten dark.
Yeah, like all of a sudden it's all fear-based.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. And we actually, as a team, attempted to create an atmosphere via our social media and website and everything to negate that. Like everything we do is like light gray and white with doves. It's like, we're love and light. We will help you. This isn't scary. It just is going to take time. And sometimes that helps and sometimes it doesn't. YouTube comment. Woohoo! I love how you're talking about these shows and how they make people want to join teams and they think it's all fun and games. And then surprise, it's a job you don't get paid for. Yeah.
I'm glad they said that, because, you actually can, if you know what you're doing.
Right.
If you know what you're doing, and you're not getting paid for literally the research that you're doing, you're getting paid for what you do with that research. I wrote books. You make money off of books. That's based off of my research. So there are ways to do it. You just don't have to do it like these guys on TV on the backs. They're snake oil salesmen. I hate that. I hate that, because people look to them. And I set so many people straight, because they'll say it to me. I'm like, no, it's not like that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like that at all.
Right.
And they're creating, they're just bad role models when it comes down to it. They've made it a joke. They've made it to where nobody wants to take it seriously. I remember doing an investigation in Little River, South Carolina, and a guy that was kind of following me on Facebook said he lived in Charleston, and he said, hey, would you mind letting me accompany you? I really want. He was a young kid. You guys probably know who he is at this point, but I said, yeah, come on up, man. I'll get you in a hotel, blah, blah, blah. Well, we get in there, and the client was staying that night because we wanted to see if that changed anything. This is a place that at that point I probably investigated 60 some times. So you change it up to see, I've never done it with the client in the room. Let's see what happens. Well, this kid that I brought immediately goes into a Zach Baggins routine, provoking and threats and cursing. And before I could even get it out of my mouth, the client said, you are not going to do that in my house.
Good for them.
He's like, I have to be the one to live with it.
Right.
And I'm looking at him. I was like, will you quit trying to do this TV stuff, man? It is not like that.
Right.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, we have people who have reached out to us to be like, hey, do you have openings on your team? And it's funny how quickly they disappear when you tell them, well, are you willing to dedicate several weekends of the month to helping people going through 6 months of training and classes and research before you can even step foot on an investigation, even if it's a fun one? Are you willing to do that and then dedicate the future of your near future to helping people? Because this is not about investigations; it's about helping people. Do you still want to do that? And it's amazing how some of them are just like ghosting; they're just gone.
Like, this is serious stuff, especially when you're dealing with clients.
Yeah,
what's happening to them is real for them. So we need to understand that, take a deeper dive in that with them, and help them. And help happens then and after.
Yeah.
Well, see, we've talked about the perception of the people on the other side of the TV. The viewers that want to be investigators and act like those investigators from TV. But it's also had a negative impact on the clients themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, with them asking, "Where's the camera crew?" But also, they think because of TV that when you get there, you're going to be ooh, ah, and you're just going to cater to exactly what they believe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to validate that for them and say yes, and you're going to put it out there on the internet. And I've disappointed quite a few people. When I've had to tell them, I'm sorry, you all, this is what it was, or this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get mad
mm-hmm.
because you were unable to prove it. And we'll just get somebody else in here, and you'll keep an eye on that, and they'll get some team that you're aware of where, everything's a ghost. Mm-hmm. And every little piece of dust is, those guys, and they'll bring them in, and all of a sudden, see, I told you, look, they said this, they got this, they got this EVP saying this, and it was really just Ed's stomach growling,
Yes.
Exactly.
We've definitely, that one of the first investigations I was ever on, we were in a bedroom, and I was hungry. I didn't eat beforehand because I was nervous, and rookie mistake. And all of a sudden my stomach made this sound that sounded like the demon coming out of the depths of hell. And even the investigators were like, "Oh my God." And I was like, "Sorry guys, I didn't eat dinner."
Yeah.
It's like, whoops. Barry, thanks for the comment, Barry. Have you ever had a case that you went to and came to find out that they were faking it or just trying to get on TV?
Yep.
Long story short.
Well, I'll give you two examples. Well, one real simple example. A red flag always goes up when I'm contacted and it's a business.
Mm-hmm.
Because now there's money to be made if your business is haunted.
Right.
Here come the ghost tours. Here comes the merchandise. You will have the thrill seekers just visiting your place now because it's been labeled haunted. Haunted bed and breakfast, haunted restaurants, haunted hotels. I always raise a red flag, but there are legitimate businesses out there that I have researched that it's truly, really haunted.
Mm-hmm.
Almost said a bad word. Really, really haunted. Now, when I read his question there, Barry's question, the actual first case that came to mind, I felt bad for them because I was hip to it almost immediately. I can't say what it was about because this would totally give these people away. But they moved into a house that had a very tragic history to it, a tragic history that made national news at the time. Okay, that I can't mention, or this would give them away. So they rolled with that, saying that's what was causing a haunting in their house. Now, I'm kind of like a hospital when it comes to children. When there's children involved, that case gets bumped up ahead of others.
Oh, yeah.
And
Definitely.
This was a family who had two daughters. The daughters were being attacked, strangled, bruises around the neck, a violent type haunting. Pictures were sent, this whole ordeal. So we make the drive. It was about 4 hours from where I was living at the time. And of course, we had already done the research on the property. We knew what the backstory was. We knew everything going into it. So when we got there, we found it strange that the family wasn't even there. And I called the guy and I'm like, "Hey, we're here. What do you want us to do? Or are you all going to get here soon,
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "We were just going to let y'all have the house for the weekend and then just let us know what happens." And I was like, "All right, well, we'd actually like to start by interviewing you guys.
Mhm.
You know, get everything documented on tape. They sign waivers, whether it's a non-disclosure, whether it's confidential, you know, that kind of thing. But the stuff needs documented. So they agreed. They came over. Before they got there, I opened up the refrigerator and there's case after case of beer, you know, because we were putting our own stuff in it, you know. It wasn't, you know, sneaking around or anything. Like, okay, well, the guy's an alcoholic. First, you know, when you start looking at all the beer cans everywhere, see the whiskey bottles everywhere, interview him. He says everything. Interview the wife. She says everything. Then it came time to interview the kids. And every time I'd ask the kids something, they would look at mom or they would look at dad, right? To make sure that we're saying the right thing.
Right.
So they end up leaving and we researched the place all weekend. Now, this family was very bad off. The children didn't even have beds to sleep in. They were sleeping on the floor.
Wow.
So it was a very, very poor family. And we would have our little campfires, you know, after investigating and talk about things like, and we all kind of came to the same conclusion. They're looking to capitalize off this to make some money,
Right.
you know, and their heart was probably in the right place. Like, hey, this is probably an easy way to get our kids a bed, you know, but at the same time, we couldn't do anything about it because there was nothing there.
Right.
Nothing there at all. And the guy wasn't happy to hear that. He expected us to have fully validated it. And, you know, we had a time, we're sorry, sir, you know, we're not saying you're lying.
Right.
Just in the 72 hours we were here, we didn't experience anything. You know, so it just led us. So I offered, you know, I know other teams I could bring in if you weren't satisfied with what we did, you know, have them check it out. We're more than welcome. We'll come back. We'll do another weekend, you know, because you never know. And long story short, you know, one of my investigators ended up buying beds for the kids.
Wow.
Which I thought was really nice.
Yeah.
But they kind of just faded away after that. And I knew it was, their motive wasn't fame necessarily. It was, this is a way to make money.
Survival.
Yeah. So it's happened. And I've had people try to fake us out to prove we're fakes. You know, and I always warn teams about that.
Right.
You better be damn good at what you do because there are people out there to prove you wrong. And you'll go in there and nanny cams and all these other hidden, they're watching you should always think somebody's watching you. Always. So be professional whether the client's there or not. You know, don't go faking anything because they could have you on tape.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Especially these days with all the nanny cams and ring cameras everywhere.
And it's happened. It's happened. I'm not going to mention names, but I know of investigators. I know of teams who got called out for staging stuff because the clients completely set them up. Completely set them up. There wasn't anything in their house. They were out to prove the entire paranormal world was BS. And it's because of people like that group, people think that.
Right.
For sure. Yeah, we actually, on our questionnaire, we have a few questions that are like, what's your interest in the paranormal? Like, have you reached out to any other teams? Have you been on any other media or reached out to, like, you know, reporters or TV shows or what? Because we want to know. We're like, are these people who are like watching paranormal shows every single weekend and therefore they're hoping that they're able to become one of these clients? Because that's just not what we're about. We're about helping people who need the help, you know? It's sad that we have to do that now.
Yeah, well, you do. But that's what separates. And I'm hoping that more people like you all, more people like the people I work with, just start coming out and just taking it over. You know, I had said this to one of my colleagues a few months ago. And it involves more than just the paranormal. It involves the music industry, the film industry. You know, when the internet first broke, it was our world. When I posted videos of my investigations, I was killing it on YouTube. You know, when the independent musician was putting his music online, he was killing it. He was being heard by people that would have never heard of him. You know, But then the mainstream took over the internet. So all of the real people, just like out there in the real mainstream world, just got buried again. So the more people that speak out like you guys and say, this is how it's actually done, we're literally having to work against our own field.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I would like to think a lot of the people or investigators or groups that are doing it the incorrect way is because that's the only source of training that they've had to know how to do it. Like, we were lucky in that we have resources, in the paranormal world in New Jersey that are reputable, that we can rely on to teach us. And we've learned a lot since we started. We were making mistakes too, no doubt. And it all, that's why, like, we feel it's important to have these conversations, because it's like, this is how you learn the right way to do it, and different points of view, because there's not always the right way. Sometimes you just have to kind of learn as you go.
Oh, yeah. Like, being an investigator is all about trying different things to see what happens. That's literally the whole point. So who's to say that if you go in screaming in a room that you would get something to happen? You know what I mean? Like, coming in with a positive reaction and see what happens, like, cracks me up.
and you can tell the difference. Believe me, in my day, I have weeded out a lot of people. You figure out who the fame seekers are almost right away. And if they're not willing to learn, there's just no need, because you can't learn it on TV. Yeah, some of the equipment's the same, but the technique's completely different. The way you implement it's completely different. It's the right idea, just wrong delivery. I guess, when it comes down to the shows.
Oh yeah,
for
and
sure.
It's funny too, because we're all always learning. Like, no one knows anything for sure, so it's like, hello.
That's what I did for 10 years. And I think it was Gail that said it. The shows at least made it less taboo. I had my first experience in 1987. Okay. And for 10 years after that, all I did was check out every book I could on parapsychology, cryptozoology, ufology, psychokinesis, just all that good stuff, And all I did was read for 10 years. And then come 1997, in my little small hometown, I just became known as the ghost guy. And I can remember my first couple cases, people saying, look, hey, will you come up here and you check this out? I think my grandfather's haunting the house, but don't tell nobody. Nobody wanted anybody to know, that you'd be laughed at if you told somebody you thought your house was haunted. But then the TV shows came out, and now everybody's got a ghost story. Everybody wants to tell you their house is haunted. So it did have a positive impact in that way. But then again, it also created a bigger problem. I don't know where the right answer is. I talk to producers quite frequently. In fact, I talked to one last week. I'm working with her again. I've worked with her in the past. And every time we talk, I always try to get my 2 cents in. Look, you really want to know what TV needs? And she's like, oh God, here it comes, and I'm always constantly pitching. I want a show that's about real paranormal research. And they all tell me the same thing. Nobody wants their paranormal busted. And I told her it doesn't have to be busted.
Right.
You don't have to say there's no such thing as ghosts. What you do is you take veteran paranormal researchers, men and women who've been doing this 10, 20, 30 years. They already have a catalog of haunted locations. They've already got file after file of EVPs, video, all this stuff. So you don't have to bore the audience by just taking a chance at a place and hoping something happens.
Right.
You've got all these great investigators out there. Take their cases that they've already proven it. And just show people how it's really done. And you can still entertain them because you've got stuff to show them.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
I agree.
Absolutely. It doesn't have, we always kid around that investigations are actually pretty boring. They're not very exciting at all. But we can still make it entertaining. But real, but entertaining.
There's been plenty of investigations where I've been sitting there like talking, but all right, just checking everything out. And it's like you find yourself like trying to keep yourself awake.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I got busted playing Candy Crush one time. I'll never forget that. I was investigating a place called Joseph's and had done it so many times, and there was nothing happening that night. I mean, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, that you've got to research these places over and over and over again, not only just to gather more and more evidence in favor of the place being haunted, but it also gives you the opportunity to disprove things that you might have been misled in the beginning. Like at the Brentwood Wine Bistro, there's a door that is always keeping people locked in it. And for the longest time, we thought it was something doing that. But long story short, it turned out to be the humidity levels. It would swell that door to where it would stick. Because once we started investigating that place in the winter, the door did not stick. It was just as smooth as could be. But we were doing this Joseph's place, had this huge, beautiful ballroom, and I'm sitting out there. I've got earpiece in. I've got an investigator upstairs, my head investigator out here. So he's within earshot of me, and I didn't realize the volume on my cell phone was open or up. And I put on Candy Crush, and of course, the Candy Crush music starts playing. Next thing I hear is the walkie get keyed, and he's like, "Really, dude?" And I was like, "Man, it's 4:30 in the morning. We've been here for 10 hours. Nothing is happening this go around,
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Brittany and I had an investigation like that. It was actually a restaurant we were investigating, and we wound up getting like locked into this restaurant. And we were sitting there for hours, and we're like, we can't. It was like 3:00 in the morning. There was nothing going on, and we somehow managed to like finagle our way out of a back door, because we were like, we were professional. We didn't just like ditch it. You know what I mean? Like we did it in a professional manner, but we were just like, we're locked in this place. There's nothing going on. I'm about to fall asleep on top of the bar. Like this is like what
exactly.
I've dealt with the cops quite a few times. I got two really quick funny stories when it comes to that. When I mentioned the Brentwood, it made me think of that. This was probably the 110th time we were investigating this place. And that's what makes it even more funny, because it's like, how could you possibly do that to me, Chef Eric? So it was the same every time I would investigate. I would either be doing it by myself, or I'd have a handful of my colleagues with me. We would meet with Eric at the end of the night, which was his, at the end of the restaurant's night. And it'd be about 11:30. Everybody's cleared out but him and my team. And he'd be like, "All right, Stephen, you know the back door, there's a key. When you get out, lock that back door. You guys," it was a routine. So we're upstairs. We're on the second level bar, and Eric goes, "All right, I'm out of here. Just call me in the morning. Let me know what you found this time, So he leaves. Well, we're milling around upstairs, and I'm like, "All right, guys, look, me and you, let's go downstairs. Let's put a level between us so we're not contaminating each other." As soon as my foot touched that first step, the alarm system went off, because the alarm system was only active on the bottom floor, the sensors, I guess. Of course, I jumped about 3 feet in the air, and I'm like, "Oh my God." Right. And we don't know, of course, what the alarm system code is, let alone when the alarm company calls the password you're supposed to know. And I'm like, should I answer that? What am I going to say? So I'm like trying to call Chef Eric, and I'm like, Eric, and he's not answering his phone. Why? Because he's halfway down the road jamming to whatever he was jamming to. So luckily for him, okay, about the time the cops are pulling in, we're decked out in all black, looking like some kind of SWAT team, robbing this place. I see Eric coming. It had hit him on his ride home, like, "Oh, I set the alarm." Luckily, he gets there in time to intercept the cop and say, "No, that was he's a French chef." I can't do his accent, but he's telling them, it's okay. The second time, this one really cracks me up. Okay. We investigated this library in Morehead City, North Carolina, done it quite a few times. And it's literally right across from a police station. So anything you get EVP wise, EMF wise, you just got to dismiss it all, because their transmissions just screw with everything that you've got. It's pretty much just visual only in that library. Well, it's about 4:30 in the morning. We're calling it quits. we lock the library up, and we're heading back to the hotel. And we see up ahead that the cops are doing a stop. They're checking people for drinking, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, this is going to look good, you know? So we're in two different vehicles. They stop the one in front and then let them go. And I'm like, okay, should be no problem. Pull up, the cop comes to my window and he's like shining his light in. Okay, again, we're in all black, tactical vests that hold all of our gear, black gloves. I mean, looking like Mission Impossible, like we either just hit the bank or we're about to hit the bank. And he goes, any of y'all been drinking? I'm like, no, sir. He's like, what y'all doing out this late at night? Now, this is the funny part. I said, we just left the web library. And he goes, oh, all right. Well, y'all be safe. Have a good night. And as I'm driving away, I'm looking at the rest of the guys. I'm like, did he not think it was odd? We just said we just left the library at 4:30 in the morning and we're looking the way we do.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. You would think for a police officer, they would question this. Yeah, these stories are great. These are great.
We're enjoying them. I think that's odd.
Amazing. That you would think police officers would question that and be like, the library closes much sooner than this.
Exactly.
When not to totally go off topic, but like Brittany and I had a similar funny story, not with cops, but like that same restaurant that we got locked into, we were told there were a few apartments above it. We were told they would be vacant and we would have the whole building to investigate.
Mm-hmm.
So we start, trudging upstairs to go investigate one of the apartments. And one of the doors was slightly ajar and the light was on. And, Brittany, of course, had the common sense to be like, wait, we should knock. And I was like, why? It's vacant. And I'm just like, da-da-da-da. I go walking in. There's this guy on the far end of the apartment. And he is sitting like on a beanbag chair. And he is engulfed in smoke and not of the cigarette kind. And I just stood there frozen. And I was just like, what? Oh, what do I do? And he looks at me, and he was just like, very smoothly, he's like, can I help you? And I was like, we're paranormal investigators. And I say that like that answers his question at all.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, you're just going to take that at face value.
Yeah.
Okay. We're just going to go with this. And then he starts like, well, if you need anything, let me know. And we're like, you know what? This probably is good that we just go our separate ways. We never speak of this. I won't say anything about you. You don't say anything about us. We're just gonna move along.
Yeah, gotta love it.
And unfortunately, that was probably the most action we had that entire night while we were at that location, was running into that guy.
That and the mouse.
Oh, there was a mouse. Yeah, no, the mouse is scary.
Good times.
But yeah. These stories are always great from investigations. The ones that don't go well are always the great stories.
Oh, yeah. Unpredictable.
But as much as we love sharing stories, maybe let's switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's venture into another topic that was also taboo for the longest time. And now, for some reason, everybody's all about it.
I know.
UFOs and aliens.
Yes. That's a hot topic right now. There's so many documentaries. I know I personally been watching so many things that I can get my eyes on at this point. And I'm going to get into books eventually. But having that said, let's jump right to it. Do you believe that aliens exist and are currently here on Earth?
I do believe that they exist. As far as like, are they among us? Like, possibly. I mean, they most certainly have technology we don't have. I mean, look at what we can do. We have cloaks that can make us disappear. That's real. So imagine what they got,
Mm-hmm.
I do think there is life outside of our planet. I think we would be arrogant as a species to think we are it.
Right.
That we because God knows if we're the highest intelligence out there, it's not good.
I agree.
I've never seen an alien, but there have been times in my life that I truly believe I saw a UFO, and I truly believe that I witnessed a cover-up of a UFO. But as far as actually physically seeing an alien gray or any kind of extraterrestrial life form, I've never been abducted, thank God, or anything like that. But I think that stuff's out there. I think the technology's out there. It's just above and beyond what we can currently do. Kind of like the paranormal when it comes to the spiritual realm.
Right.
Where, people keep trying to use science. Well, you're using man-made science to try to prove something that you can't use man-made science to try to, you can't measure it.
Right.
There's you can't use it to dismiss it either. So yes, long story short, I do believe my first, I want to say it was 1993. As a matter of fact, this back when I was in my youth, I we didn't have fancy tape recorders and stuff. We had to literally write down in journals our investigations, take notes and all that stuff. And I remember I was driving home one night or going out or something like that. And I saw these three strange lights kind of, well, it was one light. It was like the shape of a triangle. And it broke off into three different triangles. And then basically just started dancing around the sky. And then eventually kind of formed again to that one solid triangle.
Huh.
And I know I wrote about this. You may catch me in a lie.
There's been like other people saying that as well in past years.
So all I had was my notepad. I used to carry, here it is. I used to carry around a backpack that had a compass in it, an old Boy Scout compass from the 50s. That's what I used to measure magnetic disturbances, was a compass. And I had this notebook. And I don't know how well you can see that, but this is what I documented that night. That's what it looked like. And it would split off and kind of dance around.
Right.
I think that's what this page over here shows. And I just stood there on the side of the road watching this happen, moving in all kinds of directions.
Wow.
I'm sorry, that was 94, August 8th, 1994.
Wow. That's cool.
That was certainly not a man-made craft. We don't have a craft now that does that. The time I witnessed a cover-up, and I will go to my grave knowing this was a cover-up. Back when I worked a normal job, I was on my way to work. And literally the stereotypical X-Files black choppers, boom, over top of the highway, just buzzed right past me as I'm driving. I'm like, oh, and they were unmarked, just like you hear, unmarked black helicopters.
Right.
I'm like, what in the world is this about? Well, I get to said job, and my friend says, hey, did you hear? Somebody saw a UFO over Conway, South Carolina. And I'm like, really? So we turn on the radio, and they're talking about it on the radio, that a UFO was seen over top of Conway, South Carolina. A guy's got video of it, So I'm like, no kidding. So I turn on the TV at this place, and the news says they're going to cover it on the 6 o'clock news tonight. I was like, oh, this is awesome. So I leave work. I get home, turn on the TV, turn on the news because I want to see this. 6 o'clock news comes on. They even say at the beginning of the program, later in the program, a UFO over Conway, South Carolina, and we've got the video. It's like, oh, this is great. Long story short, the news came and went, and they never aired at all what they were going to talk about. So you tell me why.
Yeah.
Because somebody shut them up.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a huge change from these days, where thanks to social media and TikTok, basically,
yeah, right.
every day there's a new one.
That's a problem all its own now too, because a lot of people made fun of me or they still do for many reasons, but because I use film. I use film when we're on investigations. I use film for a camera, video camera. I use, they're getting harder and harder to find, but I use cassette tapes for EVP sessions. Mm-hmm. Why do I use film? Because film can be validated.
Right.
Mhm.
You can literally look at a piece of film, analyze it, with the proper equipment, and see if it's been manipulated in any way. So what we have working against us now is any 10-year-old with an iPhone 12 can fake something, and it look real as can be.
Mhm.
The digital stuff, unless it's blatantly so fake to you, CGI, however you want to say it. But the digital stuff, you can't validate it.
Right.
You can't prove it, and you can't disprove it. If it's on film, you can at least prove the fact that what was caught and on film.
Mhm.
Now, whether what you caught is what you perceive it to be, but you can prove that that wasn't manipulated in any way.
Mhm.
So we've got technology working against us in that department.
That's
So
true.
that actually leads kind of into the question that Ron had asked before on through YouTube regarding a recent increase in sightings. What are your thoughts on that? From what you just said, do you think that they're all legitimate, or do you think that there's a reason why there's more sightings these days other than potentially fake ones?
I think some of them probably are legitimate, but I think at the same time, the powers that be are sitting back and laughing because you have all of these people reporting sightings, posting their hoaxes that are intentionally hoaxing, posting their fake videos. So nobody's going to buy into it. So the government, not to get all conspiracy on you, but the government, is saying, nobody's going to buy this stuff because everybody's out there faking it. So that's a shame because it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf.
Right.
When it is the real thing, everybody's kind of scratching their head. I don't know if I can believe that or not. Now when Roswell happened, that was easily believable because, especially at the time that happened, we didn't have the technology that we have now. In fact, after Roswell is when our technology went through the roof. The home computers, the microwaves, the color TVs, the pacemakers, the microchip, the laser, all of this stuff happened right after Roswell. I'll let you figure that one out on your own, but now anybody can do it. So it's hard. I sit there and I look at this stuff and I'm like, damn, if that don't look real. But can I believe it?
Right.
I don't know. And that's the problem. It's you can't win. If paranormal research is a game, you cannot win because you could have a video of you sitting at a table having a 30-minute conversation with a ghost and it be totally real. It'd be the holy grail of footage. And nobody's going to believe it ever. Ever.
Yeah.
So it's like, that goes back to, then why are you really doing this?
It's true.
Most of the time, and I think you guys said it yourself, because something happened to you and you wanted the answers. So first and foremost, you're doing it for yourself. I think most paranormal investigators, researchers who are authentic are in it because it's something that started with them. And then it became into helping people and learning from people. And because the more you investigate, the closer you may get to figuring out why what happened to you did.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Even like what happened to me, that was back in the 90s, but I remember like it was still taboo to even tell other people or attempt to. You know what I mean? And we didn't know of any investigators in our area in northern New Jersey. So it's like the secret I had to keep for like years, and that just sucked.
Well, a good example of that is the experience I had. Of course, at 10 years old, I was told I was having a nightmare. Everything that I experienced was nothing but a nightmare.
Right.
And that's what I believed. Half of me believed that that's what that was. Half of me believed, no way, I was there. I know what exactly happened. There's just no way. And after I released my first book in 2009 or 2010, my folks had come down for Thanksgiving. And Mom told me, she's like, I never told you this, but what happened to you at the age of 10 also happened to me. So here I was as an adult, and finally, decades later, getting validation for that. Because at that time, you were nuts.
Right.
You were nuts if you talked about that kind of thing.
Right.
Oh yeah.
For
crazy.
sure. It was definitely a generational thing, and still to this day, because even when we did our conversation with Chris Cesare, and he had this huge experience that happened to him at college, and his dad came to visit him there, and his dad had something happen to him, but didn't even tell Chris until like probably 15 years later when they did a TV show and interviewed him, and he found out by watching that TV show. And it's like, part of you wants to be like, Dad, why wouldn't you tell me? It would make me feel so less crazy. But the other part of you is like, A, it's probably a generational thing. B, he probably thought, am I crazy? And C, he's like, he probably thought, what would have benefited by me telling you that other than freak you out more at that point?
Right.
So it's hard. It's definitely hard.
It is.
Conundrum.
Next. What is your take on alien abductions? Because, you know, as many UFO sightings there are out there, there are a lot of people saying that they've been through something like an abduction.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about that?
Again, I'm gonna repeat myself. I believe it's happened.
Right.
They're no different than us. We abduct things all the time.
It's true.
Hey.
What do our biologists do?
Yep.
What do our scientists do? We're studying animals. We're taking them out of their habitat and poking them and prodding them and learning from them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's entirely believable that there's a species out there that's doing the same thing. But how do you prove it? You know, you look at Barney and Betty Hill, you know, that case, that's somewhat believable because we were talking about, first off, an interracial couple, which at that time was a no-go. You know, it just wasn't accepted back then. So why put yourself out in the limelight when you've already got a target on you? Mm-hmm. So that kind of adds some validity to their story. But then you have other abduction stories where it's to get that 15 minutes of fame. You just don't know.
Right.
You know, because I read the Falcon Lake incident in Canada. You know, everything that was done to this guy's body could have been done by anything man-made. It wasn't something that stuck out. You know, it wasn't something medical examiners said, we can't figure out what that is.
Right.
You know, so it's tough. The problem I have is, again, like I alluded to earlier, or just flat out said, trying to use our man-made science to figure this stuff out. That is the wrong thing to do. Now, I think we're on the right path studying energy, and we can talk about more of that later. But the point I'm getting at is, you hear so many educated people, these scientists, these doctors say, there's no possible way there could be life out there because there's no air and there's no water. That is basing a living being on what we need, on how Earth thrives. Mm-hmm. That's just so asinine to me, because there could be things out there that doesn't have to eat, that doesn't breathe, that doesn't need water. You know, why are we assuming that everything has to have those things?
Right.
Again, you can't use our science because you're trying to study something that there's no science for yet, at least for us.
Right. Definitely.
It's the flat Earth syndrome. That's what you knew to be true. So you base everything off of that. And then suddenly one day you realize, oh, wait, it's round.
Well, you know, I kind of take it as, look at the evolution of the intelligence of man. And I tell people, you can tell a lot by war. Okay. At one point in time, we thought it was a great idea to stand in a line with other men, pointing a rifle that only had one shot at another line of men, pointing rifles at us that only had one shot. We thought that was a great idea.
Yep.
We did this.
Yeah.
We did this. Okay. We once thought that if I thought you two were witches. I'm going to throw you into a body of water. And if you float, you are a witch. So that means you have to drown yourself and die to prove that you're not a witch.
Mhm.
We did this.
Yeah, it's a little embarrassing.
And the sad part is that wasn't that long ago that we
No.
were at that point.
No. That's what I'm saying. In the grand scheme of things, when you look at technology, the past 50, 60 years has been the explosion, and it just seems to be right after that Roswell thing.
Mhm.
We had all this time before where things just pretty much stayed the same. You know, people changed their hair, you know, and clothing lines changed, stuff like that. But technology, it just exploded all at once.
Mhm.
But yeah, the education, the intellect of man is how I judge most things. And here we are in 2021, and we're still figuring things out.
Yeah.
All I got to say, to me, it's paralysis by analysis. You're trying to look into it too much when the answer is very simple. And the funny thing is our own biology, our own science actually proves ghosts exist. We are of a bioelectrical makeup.
Mm-hmm.
We have electricity in our bodies. Our brain is firing off electrical impulses. What do we know? What has been taught to us in science? That energy is infinite. It does not die. It simply changes form.
Mm-hmm.
So when we pass on, yeah, this body goes away. It rots. But where did that electricity go? Where did that energy go?
Mhm.
Some people, the religious sects, they'll call it, it's the spirit. And it may very well be that. You know, that may be your consciousness. But in the end, that energy is going somewhere. And I think that right there is our link to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
If we even we're going to call it the other side. We act like there's like this other dimension or something. Is there? Or is it just something that after that, our human mind can't comprehend?
Yes. We create constructs because our brain would explode without them, basically. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of one of those things that we always talk about when, you know, we look at all aspects of all topics of the paranormal, including the scientific aspect of it. And we never want people to say, yes, I 100% believe in ghosts. We just want them to say, maybe.
Right.
There's that, give that little wiggle room of maybe, because I can't know everything about everything in the universe. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's impossible to then say that you 100% know about something one way or the other. Like, just say maybe, and I'm happy with that.
Well, again, it goes back to that game you can't win, because you have the people, which is 90% of these fad-driven fly-by-night investigators out there, who believe everything. It doesn't matter. They could hear something creak right now. That was a ghost.
Right.
That was a ghost. Had nothing to do with the cat that just jumped off the counter. You know, that was a ghost. You have the other people that no matter what are never going to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you try to show them that piece of footage, or, hey, listen to this, it's fake.
Mhm.
It's fake. That's fake. It's not real. So you're never going to be able to prove it to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so again, it's a game you can't win. All I ever ask is, look, you can't say it's not real. I can't say it is real. All I can do is present it to you, and you just make up your own mind, because all that matters to me is what I think and what my clients think at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all that matters to me. All I ask is that you understand. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Take it in and think what you can with it.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting.
Britt, I think you just have one more question, right? About UFOs and aliens.
Yes. Okay, so many people believe that in terms of galactic entities, like we're the babies of the universe, right? So where do you think we stand on that evolutionary scale?
I don't know if you could really measure that without knowing what else is out there, but I think we're just a speck in the grand scheme of things. Because as cliche as it is to say now, you know, I can remember in college looking through a microscope and seeing this whole universe that has no clue I'm even there.
Mhm.
It has no clue I exist. It doesn't know anything but its universe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you kind of pull out from that and you look at us, and our universe to us has no end.
Right.
You know, so what is beyond all that? You know, is it just this big here? Is that it? And it just definitely ends. You know, is this cigarette Earth and then it ends right here? This is the end of our universe, or is it this whole room? You know, and then you've got all these other things. I mean, that's just an impossible question to answer. You know, but we're not the end all. There's just no way. There's no way.
I agree.
And that's without even bringing religion into it.
Right.
You know, if you bring religion into it, well, there's another whole, you know, world or belief system or whatever, however you want to describe it.
Or you can think our teammate Sabrina, we had a live where we talked about aliens for like an hour and a half. And her theory was that aliens created us to be like their little plaything. And they're just watching us going like, look at this ant farm. Isn't this cool? Look at that going on over there.
It could very well be. Could be, you know, that was one thing I liked that scene in I think it was Men in Black, where it showed the camera panning out and how Earth got super small, and then there were all these different worlds with living things on it. That's very much probably true.
Yeah.
You know, here we are again, like I said, in 2021, still discovering species every day. We still haven't got everything out of the ocean. And we're, you know what I'm saying? There's still areas of this planet we've never even seen.
Right.
You know, we've got organisms, they're thawing out from the Arctic that are still alive. We're just now finding these things out in 2021, you know? And then people want to not believe this other stuff. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies is Contact with Jodie Foster. And at the, you know, when she, not to spoil the movie for anyone, but there's a scene where she speaks with an entity and he goes, the human race is an interesting species. Well, an interesting mix anyway. And my mind was like, oh my God, what if we're like a mix of two aliens and we got just like implanted here and we're actually just like this hybrid of something, and it makes your brain go in 50 directions.
Well, you know, I'm big into history. I'm not, you know, I'm not ancient aliens guy by any means, but some of that stuff is very captivating when you think about, okay, how are these pyramids built? Because I don't care. They have their theories as to rolling these 2-ton blocks across logs, and no, I don't care. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. How did the Mayans and the Aztecs build these temples to look like animals that you can only see from the sky?
Yep.
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it, man. The man, again, you can judge the intellect of the human species by just going through history. You know, if in colonial days we were shooting straight back and forth at each other, how in the hell were we building something like that way before then?
Exactly.
I think about that all the time.
Yeah, and it's you look at it, and it's not just even just the pyramids. It's like, what is that? The headstone, right? Am I thinking?
The Sphinx?
You know what I'm talking?
No.
Those stones that were coming out of the ground that were like in a circle. Stonehenge. I said headstone. Stonehenge. And you wonder, like, okay, these have been here a long time. How and why? What did they represent? How did they get here? Yeah. We'll never know. Well, at least not in our human form. Maybe in the next form we might know. We might find out these secrets.
There's just too much. There's too much that points to it.
Yeah.
You know, because it was easier back then too. If you think about it, if you want to think about aliens visiting the Earth, that was the time to do it. When you think about it, you know, the Earth wasn't overpopulated. There was nobody with their iPhone 12 going like this. You know, that was the time to do it.
For sure. Well, as fun it is to talk about aliens, let's move into another topic that you are pretty well known for, and you've actually already mentioned. the Brentwood Wine Bistro.
Mhm.
So well, we all did. We watched the I'm not going to say it right. Phantom documentary. It's on Amazon. Phantom.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure if it was Phantom or Phantomy. And it was an interesting documentary for sure. And one of the things that I found especially interesting about it was the fact that the house itself didn't originally begin in that location. It was somewhere else and it was moved there.
Mhm.
So in regards to that, how do you think that would have affected, changed, or intensified the activity in the location since it didn't even start off there?
I think in the case of the Brentwood, which that documentary, by the way, there are two audiences for it. If you guys are the TV audience out there watching, don't watch this because you won't like it. It's not TV. With the Brentwood, where originally sat, just to keep it short, this real estate person wanted the land it was on, and Essie McCorsley was adamant she did not want that house destroyed because she knew something was there. And it may make you think maybe it was her husband, maybe because she opened it up as a bed and breakfast after he died, a bed and breakfast for local fishermen. So there were constantly people in and out of that. And she cut the deal, and the deal was you had to move the house, every bit of it. And it's one of the few documented, because most of the time they rebuild a foundation. They moved it all, the foundation and all. So it is the same beacon, as I call it, just moved across the street, essentially. It was like here, and now it's like here. And of course, Essie later passed on. The house exchanged hands multiple times throughout the decades, and everybody had the same encounters. And it kind of became like this local lore until the Masons came along. Like I said, Chef Eric is from France and buys the property to turn it into the Brentwood Wine Bistro. And he is the biggest skeptic I have ever met. And him and his wife took it over. And what really intrigued me when they contacted me to first start researching that place, what really grabbed me was the fact that they had no prior knowledge of the stuff that had been happening there. And she was describing it to the T. That's what got to me, is it was like she had already lived through it, but she didn't. She knew nothing about it because it was on the down low. Only people like me knew about it. And that's what grabbed me. Is like, how does she know this? They just took this place over. They're from France. You know what I'm saying? This little old fisherman's house. It's right. Not like Googled. Oh, let's get that house, and then we'll say it's haunted. It wasn't anything like that. So that's what grabbed me, and that was the first time in my life. I've experienced a lot in the paranormal, the subtle things, the moving things, the voices, sound, stuff like that. But that was the first time in my life I saw a full-fledged entity, a 6-foot-tall, solid black silhouette of a man walk across the room in front of me.
That's so cool.
That was incredible. And at that point, I was 13 years into research, and that was it. I was like, this place is literally the Holy Grail. And after talking, I've just built a great relationship with that family. And at this point, I'm 13 years into investigating that place. And at the time of the documentary, it was 10 years. Wow. So 10 years worth of research to show you an hour, and that's what I'm talking about. TV could do. Right. You can do it and still show stuff, Right. That place is awesome.
Yeah, we found it was done, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "I need more,
more answers." Do you have any indication what you thought that apparition who could have been?
Well, at this point, like I said, I refer to the place as a beacon, like a magnet for spiritual activity. Right. Miss Kim has had interaction with a child. I've had interaction with Essie. I've had interaction with Clarence and a man named Frank, who is not so nice. This guy lives to intimidate. And he was part of the reason they almost sold that place, because it was just getting out of hand. You never know what version of the Brentwood you're going to get when you go in there that night. And that's what makes it so captivating.
Right.
Is sometimes it's benign, sometimes it's intimidating. And I think there's like this, not to sound dramatic, but like this battle behind the scenes of, it's Essie's house, but there's this guy who was this old fisherman that I believe is trying to be the man of the house, so to speak, without trying to sound too kooky. But there's more to come on the Brentwood. I will tell you that. I will tell you that. As a matter of fact, in 3 days, we're traveling to film again for the Brentwood, and that's going on. I can't say what network just yet, but it's going to be on national TV probably about October.
That's amazing.
Good. That's our favorite time.
Yeah, it's my favorite time of year, October. That's amazing. That's super cool. So earlier you actually kind of talked about how you debunked the bathroom door, right? That kept sticking and locking somebody in there. You also indicated on the documentary that the dumbwaiter was kind of like moving up and down on command. Were you able to debunk that at all, or is that still kind of one of those weird occurrences?
The first time it did that is the one and only time, because it was just so stressful, I'll never do it again. But I held a paranormal conference at the Brentwood Wine Bistro in 2011. And I had Stephen Lancaster, the guy who wrote The Uninvited. I had Shannon Sylvia from Ghost Hunters International, myself speaking on the Brentwood. And basically the way the conference went is you came, you got to sit down to dinner. Chef Eric made everybody dinner. We all did presentations. Of course, mine was on the Brentwood. I think Shannon's was, her presentation was called Another Orb Bites the Dust. And that was about debunking orbs. And of course, LaChance did his Uninvited stuff from the Union Screaming House. And that night, we only sold 25 tickets because we wanted them to be able to have a good investigation. We didn't want 100 people in this building.
Right.
So that night they got to investigate. And that was the first time that dumbwaiter had done that. And what was interesting is I invited a reporter along who was very skeptical. And I said, why don't you come? Why don't you come see this investigation tonight? There's going to be all walks of life in there. People came from all over to do this. And see for yourself and report honestly on what you believe. So his phone rings while he's there, and the ringtone was Etta James' At Last, which of course is a period song that would have been popular when Essie was alive, in her 30s or so. And that's when that dumbwaiter light kicks on and starts going up and down, and it would only do it to that song.
Wow.
And wow, this is crazy. And, we documented that for probably 45 minutes when it was on My Ghost Story on Biography. They really didn't tell you that went on for 45 minutes. And it never happened again. It never happened again until we shot that documentary. And, the investigators there, my wife was there, Kevin was there. They started singing, I think, an old Carpenter song. And it starts doing it, It's like, this is incredible, because you can vividly see the button on the wall has to be pushed to make this dumbwaiter go up and down. We had cameras showing that nobody's touching that button.
Wow.
That's pretty incredible.
That is.
So
yeah. It kind of makes sense in terms of what would trigger it, just like I saw a documentary also that you did with Norman, where you were in a hotel room and you were doing kind of an EVP session in a way, not really EVP. You had, I guess, what was it? Like a spirit box or something with you. And he was interacting with you, and there were certain things that would trigger it. And so it would make sense that depending on the location and the entity, instead of just sitting there and saying, speak to us, turn on this flashlight, maybe sit there quietly, have a conversation regarding a topic that entity might be interested in. Maybe play some music, maybe talk about whatever, would interest them at the time. If it was a restaurant, talk about, what kind of food would you make in here? That kind of thing. We actually find on investigations, we get much more much more validated EVPs and intelligible EVPs when we just sit in a room casually talking to each other than we do if we sit there provoking, which we never do, or we call them out or ask them, turn on this flashlight. No, don't turn on this flashlight, because now tomorrow the client is going to be sitting at home and all their flashlights are going to turn on. You know? So it's interesting that Etta James would trigger the dumbwaiter. That's cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
I've never seen anything like that. I've seen objects move and be thrown and all that kind of thing, but that was something else. That was a major event.
Yeah, that's cool.
I love it.
Well, we have about a half hour left, so I think we're just going to kind of go through a few general paranormal questions with you, mostly ghostly related, if that's all right.
Sure.
One thing I honestly really wanted to talk to you about, on a recent episode of your show with Rick Hale, Shadow Initiative, you showed a video where you captured a shadow person on there.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept of shadow people always intrigued us as a team, because it's funny how people have such different conceptions of what they are or what they could be. Many people, automatically assume it's something dark, negative, trying to taunt them. Other people, not so much. So there's a lot of theories as to what they could be. What are your thoughts on shadow people and what they potentially could be?
See, I don't really call them shadow people. I just refer to it as an entity. There's too many labels. Again, that paralysis by analysis. But in my experience, like at the Brentwood, that was a full-blown shadow entity. It was a solid black silhouette of a man walking. I mean, that's a ghost. What else are you going to call it, There's pictures of him. There's videos of him. I did the USO building in Wilmington, this old military USO building. And I stood on the stage in the USO and filmed for 2.5 minutes a man standing in the back. But the only reason I'm saying he's a man is because he had the physique of one.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There was no face, there was no physical characteristics that were defined. It was just broad shoulders, tall, male-like figure. Very rarely. Now I've captured pictures like at the Brentwood where the face is coming out of the mirror. Is that the mirror making it that way? The face I captured at Pugin's Porch Restaurant in Charleston was through a window. And I think a lot of how we visualize these things, there are a lot of elements in play we don't consider.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you get the faces, it's like in mirrors through windows. How many pictures have you seen of something peering out a window?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? A lot. But when you hear about the shadow entity stuff, it's always in a hallway. It's out in the open in some way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And there are environmental factors to consider. Like, well, maybe it's being visualized that way because the humidity level's a certain way. There's a storm just rolled through, so the ionic energy is high in the air. Mm-hmm. There are so many things to consider. Like us, when we get up in the morning, we decide, okay, is it Def Leppard or Guns N' Roses t-shirt? Which one am I going to wear? That's a factor in what gives us our appearance. Do I put my contacts in or do I wear my glasses? Mm-hmm. So yeah, you have like your thermal video footage, that's showing temperatures, and those temperatures can look like a person. So that's suggesting that that's an entity. I don't think shadow people are like their own species, if you want to call it that. I just think there are different variables we have yet to really put down as concrete and in a book and say, okay, if it's a shadow entity, then that means this was the temperature, this was the level of magnetic fields, this was the ionic energy, okay, this was a full manifestation where we could see actual physical characteristics of a face, what was going on then. There are people who are colorblind. There are people who are like red-blue colorblind, red-green colorblind. They see things differently. Right. I'm one of those people. I see things differently than you do. What looks green to you looks brown to me. Mm-hmm. So I think, I guess just to keep it short, I don't think there's all these different kinds. I think it's just the perception and outside factors that are giving it that appearance at the time. We all agree that it takes some form of energy to manifest, to move objects, to communicate.
Mhm.
So with that being considered, is this amount of energy what gives you these black characteristics? Is this amount of energy what gives you the voice? You know, I hate the labels. I really do.
Mhm.
I just think it goes back to, okay, you die, there goes that energy. It's going to do something. It's going to go somewhere. Is that why you have deja vu? You know,
Right.
when you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you think, man, I've been here before.
Mhm.
Did you just walk through somebody's energy who had been there before? You know, is possession nothing more than like a remote control car? You know, where somebody else's energy just got, it has nothing to do with religion. It just has to do with somebody else's energy got into you and they happen to be a bad person.
Right.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
there's so many variables.
Yeah. Well, one variable that always intrigues me. I was just about to say that, Barry. We are on the same page, sir.
you go.
Interdimensional beings. So, what is a dimension? Do we believe in it? Do they exist? Are they there? Could a shadow person just be an entity that's half there, half here, either on
Right.
purpose or by accident? Like, what do you think about dimensions?
It's possible. It's possible. You know, you hear about wormholes,
Mhm.
and you hear, especially in relation to extraterrestrials, the loss of time. You know,
Mhm.
where time's moving this speed here, but this speed there. At that farm area, that case I told you that was really violent. We experienced that there. It was 80 some acres, 90 some acres, a lot of it woodland. And we would go in one way and come out somewhere completely different that logically did not make sense.
Mhm.
And the time was like we would go in and your watch would say it was 15 minutes, but when you came out, you were in there for 3 hours. You know, so I do believe there, I don't know if I'd use the word dimension, but I think there's these like time bubbles, you know, and I think magnetism has a lot to do with that. The Earth's natural magnetism and ionic energy can create these loops, maybe in a way. But then you've also got to think, and I always think back to the movie Predator. Okay, you remember what he looked like when he was cloaked, right? You can see him move, but he's like blending into everything, but you still see him moving.
Right.
Well, our military has that kind of camouflage now. You know, it bends light. So it's literally just bending light. So they put that on, and whatever is behind them is being brought around by bending light and putting it in front of them. I
Huh.
watched a really cool video of that in use where you see a tank and one of our military guys is wearing this. And you don't see it happen at first. All of a sudden, you just see the tank explode. But then it loops it again, and they put a little circle on the screen, and it looks like the Predator when he's cloaking himself, turning into looking like the grass, the high grass the guy's in. And then you can see him when you're following. Once your eyes connect, you see him crawl up on top of that tank and drop a grenade in, and then crawl off and disappear.
Wow.
So if we have that kind of technology, the shadow entities, these transparent things that we see that we are calling a ghost, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an extraterrestrial. Maybe it's cloaked. You know, there's just so many variables.
There are.
So, not to get super weird here, but we're going to, because this is
Do
what we
it.
do. And Brittany is going to probably be like, yes, when I say this, but you use the word time a lot there. And there is that idea that time is just a construct that doesn't actually exist, and everything is all happening all at the same time, you know, and we're all just wibbly wobbly, like Doctor Who, wibbly wobbly, timely wimely, interjecting, crisscrossing, and all that fun stuff. Maybe.
It's possible. It's possible. You know, like I said, I go back to why I use film and cassette tape and stuff like that, because it all uses magnetism,
Mm-hmm.
which is energy. And it's almost as if the afterlife is a recording that's constantly being played, you know, but you can't say it's not self-aware because we have communication.
Right.
Mhm.
We've had communication sessions. There are intelligent haunts out there, however you want to call it, intelligent spirits out there. So it's not just residual. It's not just a loop. But I think it goes back to what our brain can and cannot comprehend. Like it's like that age-old question. Well, if God created us, who created God? Well, our brain can't comprehend that.
Mhm.
That's the easy answer, right?
Mhm.
So that you can think about that with the paranormal or our own existence. But after this is gone and we become part of everything in that energy, the universe, it probably starts to make a little more sense. It's more, not to make a joke, but maybe more or less like the Matrix,
Mhm.
where you can bleed in and out. And that's what we're seeing,
Mhm.
We're probably surrounded all the time. Because think about the billions and billions and billions of people who have died. That is billions and billions and billions of grams of energy that left. That's out here. It's here right now.
Mhm.
So what we need to figure out is how and why and when it's able to interact with us.
Mhm.
So what do you think is the possibility of that energy being able to just kind of come to life again, and hence the theory of past lives and that energy, being just put in a new body in a new time and living another life?
I don't know. I always talk about observation. When we're born, we grow, we learn, we're learning from observation. So, like I said with Norman the doll, it's believed it was a child spirit that went in that doll. Well, at this point, that spirit will be 60 years old. So, in that 60 years of time, through observation, is it now the mentality of a 60-year-old man?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't. It's just a different existence we can't comprehend. We just sound like nuts trying to. Because that little piece of, I think it's a lot like, if I were to guess, I think it's a lot like when you close your eyes and you start daydreaming, or when you're trying to go to sleep and you just start thinking about things. Everything's dark, yet you can visualize. And I think it's a lot like that. You're conscious of what's going on, but it's visually different because you're not human anymore.
Right.
I don't know. This could go on forever.
We have like weekly conversations about stuff like this. Like Britt
Yeah.
and I, we have our wine nights where we're 3 hours in and we're talking about like the secrets of the universe, and we're like, how did we get here?
Or I'll just like text all of them like a question. I'm like, think about this, and they're all like,
Oh, I've done that. Don't even get me started on Back to the Future. I will ruin that movie for you.
I love it.
I totally agree. Okay, well, let's ask a really easy, obligatory, standard question that you've probably been asked a million times before. What is your number one bucket list investigation location you would love to go to at some point in your lifetime?
I don't know. I don't think I really have. I'm not big into the household names, the commercialized locations. I have the places that in 20 some years that I've researched that I jump at to go back to, like the Brentwood Wine Bistro, the Country Squire Restaurant, the Webb Library. I would love to go back to that farm place, but it's just not going to happen for one reason or another. But those are places that I like because I know they deliver.
Right.
I know when I go there, I'm going to have a productive night of research. I don't yearn to go to Bob Mackey's. I don't yearn to go do some asylum. It'd be fun, but I don't know. There's really not a dream place for me. Just whatever. Just show me a place that produces, and that's good. I'm good.
No, it makes sense, and
That's fair.
that's an honest answer, because I think a lot of the places that are over commercialized, because they have so many people in and out constantly investigating, there's such a mix of energy at that point. Like,
Mhm.
what do you know what's legitimate anymore at that point?
Yeah, like what's just of the location and what could possibly be other people's energy who've been in and out.
Mhm.
Right.
Like, you don't know.
Totally. Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up with the question we ask everybody at the end of every Q&A that we do. And that is regarding what we like to refer to as the warning people, I'm about to curse, oh shit moment. And that is that moment in your life where you kind of thought maybe the paranormal existed, but then something happened and you were like, oh shizzle, this is real. Guys, this is real. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it anymore. This is going down.
It was probably about an hour and 50 minutes ago when I logged on with you guys. No. Aside from seeing that shadow entity at the Brentwood, I will never forget that night. That night caused me to up my game and start wearing a head cam, because the way that went down is I'm at the top of the steps. I've got an investigator here to my right in another room and another investigator coming up the steps. He gets my attention and tells me I just changed my battery and it's dead. The camera's dead. There was a camera sitting on a tripod in front of me that was plugged into an outlet and went off. Okay, there was no going dead. It's plugged into an outlet. How does that go off? Right. And in the corner of my eye, I see this thing walking, and I turn, and of course, there's some choice words there, and I'm like, God, I turned like this, hoping my camera got it, but he was gone, and it's like head cam after that.
Yeah.
But as far as a piece of footage that I own that is the absolute epitome of this is it, man. This is it. It was taken with a thermal video camera, and it was at that farm I was telling you about, the Violent Place. And the farmhouse itself was 3 stories up, and the attic was very active. So I had set there was like a 6-foot ladder up, and I put this thermal camera on the ladder so it would get the entire attic. You could walk. It was like another whole floor. It wasn't some low attic or nothing. And at the end of the attic were these 2 windows. Now, on the side of the attic, the walls, there were doorways where you could actually go out and go on top of the rafters. And I'm out there with my now wife. We're doing a communication session. And I'm staring all the way down these rafters. And I start seeing this black mass moving. And I'm like, oh, it's just getting late. My eyes are playing tricks on me. And she's asking questions, this, that, and the other thing. And then it moved in a way that was undeniable. And I'm like, oh, and the words just came out. It's okay. That was real. Right. So the next day I'm like, you know what? I want to look at that thermal video footage. So I go back up, I pull it down because there's no power at this place, which is another thing that made it amazing. No running water, nothing. We were literally roughing it for the weeks that we were there. And I'm running this into the laptop. And what happens is you can hear us out there on the rafters doing the communication session. There's 2 windows, okay, that this thermal camera is aimed at. The first window, you see about the size of a basketball, this like bluish sphere, okay, come past the window. Then it disappears. When it gets to the next window, which is just before it would go through the wall to where I see this thing, it's full bodied. Okay, definitely a person, what you would think is a person. And then it goes through the wall and you hear me say, oh shit. Right? Now, I was very captivated with that footage to begin with. Starts out as a sphere. By the time it gets to the other window, full body, like it was carrying a sack. This particular property had old slave quarters on it. There was voodoo practiced at it. So these fields were old soybean fields. So people worked these fields. Entirely believable. It all fell in line. But then I really got to think, okay, wait a minute. If this thing came across the entire attic, why didn't I see it the whole time on the thermal camera? I only saw it in the windows because it was outside, 3 stories in the air. So that's why once it comes past the first window, I see it, and then there's wall,
Right. Yeah.
Don't see it until it hits that second window and it is manifested to a full body. It was up in the air, 3 stories in the air. That piece of footage is amazing.
That's crazy. Wow. Was there at one point or another like a building or something there that like residually it must have been like walking that's not there anymore?
Nope, this was nothing but the old plantation house. And far out across the fields, all this acreage were the slave quarters, the old tobacco barns. One of the tobacco barns was still standing. One of the slave quarters were still standing. This was operational in 1840.
Yeah.
Some rich dude bought the property thinking he was going to turn it into a bed and breakfast. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes that piece really incredible. It would still been incredible anyway if it was inside, but the fact that it was 3 stories in the air, because anybody could look at that footage, and if it was done completely inside, you could just say, well, a person just walked in front of the thermal camera.
Right.
But knowing that it was outside, 100 feet in the air.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. That's the holy grail of evidence for sure.
And that literally was my oh shit moment, because I did say oh shit. But then again, it goes back to how you visualize things, because when I saw it, it was a black mass.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The thermal camera showed it as a figure.
Yeah. It's all about perception.
Love it.
Well, thank you so much for taking this time to have this conversation with us. We've truly enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah, it was a good time.
And for anybody who's interested in learning more about Stephen Lancaster, his website has been popping up on the screen the whole time on the bottom there, authorstephenlancaster.com. And to hear all about his wonderful books and, history, everything about him. And you're on Facebook as well, and YouTube and all that fun stuff, right?
Yep. But don't think you're going to get like serious guy on YouTube, because I do stuff about all my vintage toys that I collect. I do stuff about music. I mean, it's not all paranormal.
There you go. Good times. Well, thank you for spending this time with us.
Yes.
Thank you for everyone who tuned in and live with us. And for those of you who are watching this video later on, thank you for watching. Be sure to comment, like, share, subscribe, click the little bell for notifications and all that fun stuff. Yada, yada, yada. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening and stay strange. Bye.
Bye, everyone.